and I felt stuck in it, and the only way I see out is to no longer play football.
August 24th, 2019, Lucas Oil Stadium, 2 weeks before kickoff. Word breaks through the stands before it breaks on the field. The franchise quarterback is retiring.
I'm going to retire. This is not an easy decision. Honestly, it's the hardest decision of my life, but it is the right decision for me.
Andrew Luck walks toward the tunnel, leaving $58 million behind. The crowd that watched him play hurt for 7 years boos him out of the building. What if he was the only honest man there? Before the contract, and before Indianapolis ever chanted his name, Andrew Luck was a kid growing up partly in London and Frankfurt, moving around Europe with his father Oliver, who played in the World League of American Football. Football was already in the blood, but what came with it was the toughness, the standards, the silence about pain. That part was learned early too. The family eventually settled in Houston, and that's where it became obvious that Luck wasn't just talented. He was different. He graduated as his high school's co-valedictorian, threw for 7,139 yards and 53 touchdowns in his prep career, and arrived at Stanford already being talked about as a generational prospect. At Stanford, he was a first-team academic All-American who chose architectural design as his major, not as a stepping stone, but because he genuinely wanted to understand how things are built to withstand pressure. And in a way, that tells you everything about how he approached everything else that followed. On the field, he broke John Elway's all-time Stanford touchdown record, finished as a Heisman runner-up twice, and by 2011, every scout in the league had him locked as the first overall pick. The money was sitting right there, and he walked away from it. He went back for his senior year, and when people asked why, he told head coach David Shaw it was because of his teammates, not the guaranteed millions. Think about what that says about who this man was before the league ever got to him. Indianapolis took him first overall in 2012 to replace Peyton Manning, one of the most impossible things a franchise can ask of a 22-year-old. He handled it anyway. Set an NFL rookie record with 4,374 passing yards, turned a 2-14 team into an 11-win playoff team in a single season, and by 2014 was leading the league with 40 passing touchdowns. In the wildcard round against Kansas City, he stood in the pocket and erased a 28-point deficit, one of the most remarkable comebacks in playoff history. Everything about his career at that point looked like the beginning of something built to last. But here is what nobody was paying attention to while all of that was happening. From 2012 to 2016, Indianapolis ranked 31st, 22nd, 16th, 11th, and 28th in pass protection. In those same 5 seasons, Luck was hit as he threw 50 times, a record for any quarterback through his first 5 years in the league, and sacked or hit in the pocket 528 total times, 34 more than any other quarterback in that same span. Their own GM, Ryan Grigson, eventually said it himself on Jim Rome's radio show. We've just got to keep him upright because he's so vital to our whole process out there. And yet, in June 2016, the Colts handed him a 6-year, $140 million contract extension, the richest contract in NFL history at the time, on the back of a body that had already absorbed a historic beating. The team paid him like a franchise cornerstone while failing to build the line that would have kept him healthy enough to be one. Now, 528 hits are not a number you hear and just move past. They land on a specific body in specific places. And at some point, the body starts keeping its own records. One that no injury report ever fully captures. It started in Week 3 of 2015 against Tennessee. Luck took a hit to his throwing shoulder in the second half and finished the game 11 of 13 in the fourth quarter with 2 touchdowns, grimacing every time a teammate so much as touched him on the sideline. The team listed it as a shoulder sprain. What it actually was, confirmed later, was a labrum beginning to fray from the inside. He missed 2 weeks, came back, and said nothing publicly. And that silence right there wasn't just toughness. That was the culture. That was what the league asks of its players, and Luck had already accepted it so completely he never even pushed back. 6 weeks later, against Denver, another hit in the fourth quarter. He stayed in the game. The Colts won. But here is what changed everything. When he woke up the next morning, he found blood in his urine and was diagnosed with a lacerated kidney and a partially torn abdominal muscle. One doctor who reviewed the injury compared the internal damage to what you typically see in a car crash victim. His 2015 season was done, and Indianapolis missed the playoffs for the first time since he arrived. Going into 2016, Luck passed on surgery, chose intense rehab, and started every single game. He posted his second-best statistical season, 4,240 yards, 31 touchdowns, and a PFF grade that year trailing only Brady and Matt Ryan, the two quarterbacks who played in that Super Bowl. From the outside, it looked like a bounce-back year. But Irsay was publicly telling reporters the shoulder was fine, no long-term concerns. And Luck never corrected him. He just kept playing, absorbing it, and kept moving forward. And privately, somewhere nobody else could see, he made a vow he told not a single person about. What that vow actually was and what it would eventually cost him to honor it, that part comes later. After the season, he had the posterior labrum surgically repaired in California. Irsay tweeted that same day that Luck would be ready for the upcoming season. What followed instead was nearly a full calendar year without throwing a football at NFL speed. He opened the 2017 training camp on the physically unable to perform list. Got 2 limited practices in October before new inflammation required a cortisone shot, then landed on injured reserve in November. At some point, he traveled to Europe for treatment the organization could barely account for publicly. When reporters pressed Chuck Pagano for updates, Pagano said Luck was communicating by email and text. Meanwhile, Irsay had separately told Tony Dungy on the Dan Patrick Show that the problem was now inside his head. The team's own owner, raising more questions than any statement could settle. Could you imagine being inside that? A body that won't cooperate, a recovery with no clean ending, and your own organization publicly contradicting itself about what's happening to you. Luck described that stretch later as a period where the pain had turned him into someone he didn't recognize. Moody, difficult to be around, a version of himself that he wasn't proud of. And he couldn't get out of it. Rehab back to the fields, then another injury sending him straight back to the start, with no real off-ramp built into the culture around him. And that vow from 2016 was still sitting there, unresolved. Nobody outside his own head knew what it was yet. But it was coming. Then 2018 happened. And for a while, for one full genuine season, it looked like everything had finally been worth it. Luck returned behind a rebuilt offensive line that at one stretch set an NFL record with 218 consecutive dropbacks without surrendering a sack, and produced the best individual season of his career. 4,593 passing yards, 39 touchdowns, a 67.3 completion percentage, and a 98.7 passer rating, both career highs. He won Comeback Player of the Year, made his 4th Pro Bowl, and led Indianapolis from 1-5 to 10-6, winning 9 of the last 11 games. The fan base that had watched 4 brutal years of injuries finally exhaled. The front office felt it too. The 2019 season wasn't just the next step. It felt like the real moment everyone had been waiting on since 2012. The version of Luck the franchise had always believed in was finally here, healthy, protected, and still one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And then, training camp opened. A calf strain, an MRI from March, the Colts never disclosed publicly until August. He missed OTAs. He missed minicamp. When camp finally opened in late July, he practiced a few days, reported ankle pain, and stopped. Irsay called it a little bone issue. Ballard described it as a high ankle-ish problem. But what Luck himself described at the press conference was something far more familiar. A calf strain becoming a posterior ankle impingement becoming a high ankle sprain. One thing bleeds directly into the next. The the same chain reaction from every year before it. And this time, he recognized exactly where it was going. What nobody outside that building knew yet is that 2 weeks before the announcement, standing on the Lucas Oil Field at practice, a thought came to him that this might be the last time he ever threw a football there as a Colt. He told himself to go out and enjoy it. The press conference that night was not planned. Schefter's report had broken mid-game through a leak, stripping Luck of any chance to do this on his own terms. No time to tell teammates first. No chosen moment. 25 minutes after the final whistle, he stood in front of reporters and said what he had been carrying since 2016.
I've been stuck in this process. I haven't been able to live the life I want to live. Taking the joy out of this game. And after 2016, where I played in pain and was unable to regularly practice, I made a vow to myself that I would not go down that path again. I find myself in a similar situation, and the only way forward for me is to remove myself from football in this cycle. That's the hardest decision of my life, but it is the right decision for me.
He called it the honest choice. The question is whether the world outside that room saw it the same way. The boos were just the opening act. Before that night was even over, Fox Sports radio host Doug Gottlieb had already posted his take. Retiring because rehabbing is too hard is the most millennial thing ever. Ben Mahler, also on Fox Sports Radio, later ran the word quitter directly above Luck's name in a headline and wrote that he deserved to take a shower in booze. Think about what that actually means. The man had played through a lacerated kidney, 3 seasons quietly managing a deteriorating labrum while his own organization told reporters everything was fine. Nearly a full year without throwing a football at NFL speed. And the word was quitter. But here's what was happening on the other side of that conversation. The players who had actually lived inside that physical reality responded from a completely different place. Aaron Rodgers went on SiriusXM 2 days later and called the reaction disgusting. Here's a guy who's making a quality of life decision. Does he not start the season? He could be on IR, cashing a paycheck without playing, but instead, he's making the decision now so they can move forward. I salute him for that. David DeCastro, Luck's Stanford roommate and a 2-time All-Pro with the Pittsburgh Steelers, told the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, "It's just sad. People treat us like circus animals. I don't think people understand how hard it is on the body and mind." And Jacoby Brissett, his own backup who had spoken with Luck privately before any of this became public, said it simply, "I wish he could have done it his way. That sucked as a teammate." The players understood something the crowd didn't. And that gap is what this whole story has always been about. The same franchise that signed Luck to the richest contract in NFL history had ranked 31st, 22nd, and 28th in pass protection across those same years. His body absorbed 528 hits. When he finally said enough, not in anger, not impulsively, but because he had genuinely run out of road, the same crowd that witnessed every single one of those hits booed him for refusing a 529th. That is not just a fan base reacting badly in a moment. That's a league that let his line get him hit 528 times, then let its own fans boo him for refusing a 529th. That is the institution delivering its verdict in real time on what happens when a player finally stops pretending. Luck had told Colts management he was retiring as far back as March 2019, 5 months before that tunnel walk. When he told team executives, they didn't believe him. Their response? "When are you going to turn it on?" His reply? "I'm not." He wasn't running from anything. He had already tried to stay in every way a person realistically can. And this league was never built to wait long enough to find out. Andrew Luck rebuilt everything on his own schedule, not the league's. Married Nicole in Prague, had 2 daughters, returned to Stanford for a graduate degree, and in November 2024, became Stanford football's first ever general manager, raising $100 million in his first year and firing his first head coach. He rides his bike to campus every morning, not because anyone's watching, because it's finally his life. If this story matters to you, the Super Thanks button keeps this series going. Subscribe because the next story will blow your mind.